All right, so today we have with us Dr. Dan Bautista. He is used to work with the University of Delaware as the diagnostic lab director. He did a lot of the directing of the diagnostic lab. However, now he has gone to industry and he works with a company called Zoetis, who is kindly helping sponsor our meetings this time. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Bautista, and he is going to share with us today Poopology 101. Dan?
Thank you very much. So I see at least 30 people joined in. So this is great. I can spoil your lunch. What an appropriate topic, right? Yeah. So why learn about and pay attention to the droppings of your flock? There's a lot that can be seen from a health perspective. As you can see over here, that's a guinea fowl on Y right there, and you can see fully formed droppings. So that to me is a sign that everything's pretty good. Really, it's not all about just looking at droppings for the sake of looking at droppings, right? So droppings would show you, give you some indications about what internal parasites your flock may have, okay? Whether that's roundworms, tapeworms, and coccidiosis or protozoan. So those are the three major categories, three major groups of internal parasites that you as a smallholder hobby flocks or backyard flock owner might encounter. So I'll share with you within 20 minutes or so my experiences in the lab. The lab when I was at the University of Delaware and Maryland, we used to offer this diagnostics for free because it's really important for the overall poultry health initiative in the region. Okay, so you might not be opening up birds like I do all the time, but you can relate to some of these things. So what would make one think of a parasite infestation problem? So if you have meat type birds, you would have birds that are not growing as fast as you want them to be. They're just weak. They get sick a lot. They are lethargic. They're very depressed. They could see watery or bloody diarrhea before some of them die, and that's a sign of severe parasitism. If you got egg-laying hens, they would reduce their egg production if not losing all of their egg production. So those are things right there. So at the bottom right, you can see I peeled open the dead chicken over there. There's really no breast meat in that chicken. All you can see is the keel. Okay, and on the top right there is you can see the tapeworms on that exposed gut. All right, so this is what we came for, right? So what is a normal dropping or poop, right? So chicken poop. That's what we're talking about. So you can see both examples. It's really not the color we're looking for, but it's the consistency. So as you can see on both pictures, you got a fully formed dropping. It's got that white cap. Birds do not urinate per se. So what they do is they concentrate, remove all of that, absorb all of that water back, and what you're left with is that white chalky substance called the uric acid, and that's urea. That's the good for fertilizer. Okay, in some birds which eat plants, you would see the chlorophyll tinge, green tinge, right? You can see that in goose droppings because they eat a lot of grass. Okay, but in chickens where they eat a lot of grains, you can see on the left side that you can even delineate some of the corn particles is in there. Otherwise, but what we're saying here is that is a fully formed dropping that you would want to see. This is still normal right here. So you can see this murky, dark, pasty dropping right here. This is what we call cecal dropping. So it's coming from the chicken's ceca. We call it ceca in the chickens. We call it appendix in humans, right? So basically that smells like the gutter, but it's still normal because it is the site for microbial digestion. So a lot of bacteria, healthy bacteria in there. And this is what a chicken hen, a hen, would let the chicks, a newborn chicks would peck on, and they would get mom's healthy microbiome or microorganisms from this cecal dropping right here. So if you see this, this is not a sign of disease. This is actually cecal droppings and or night droppings, they would call that. Okay, so in modern poultry, commercial poultry hatcheries, they don't get to peck on this natural probiotic, so to speak, to get a head start. But in natural settings where you still have chickens brooding and hatching their eggs, they have a chance for those birds, day old chicks, to peck on this natural probiotic, so to speak, and that would set up the gut for the colonization of good bacteria. All right, so again, a few more examples of chicken poop. Okay, on the left is a fully formed dropping. On the top right is probably a waterfowl dropping. That's probably goose droppings. So again, it's about the consistency, right? And the bottom left, that could be a guinea fowl dropping right there. So all normal examples. Now, what is not normal is you can see tinge of blood or sloughed off intestinal wall. So that on the left side is watery. It has that orange. It's really part of the wall that really sloughed off because there's some irritation going on. On the top right it's very watery. It still has so definitely you don't have that formation of the uric acid. So that is bad. You're either losing birds or the birds are losing weight. Now, when you see green droppings, that's usually severe. That means the bird is not eating. That's what it says. It's too sick to eat. And so that could be a lot of things, different diseases, and that's not a good sign. So that green tinge is due to the bile. It's not what they're eating, but it's due to the bile not being absorbed by normal feed. So if the bird's not eating, the bile doesn't have anywhere to go but to get pooped out by the bird. Now on the top left, I want you to pay attention to that bloody diarrhea right there. That bird is not going to survive the day. That will die in a short order just because there's a lot of blood coming out of its intestines, gut. So again, you see this other examples of different diarrhea, so to speak. All of this are not normal. Okay, so we will delve into that. Now, when you see bloody droppings, I'd like you to think about one disease in particular, and that is coccidiosis. We call it cocci for short. Okay, it's a parasite that you cannot see by the naked eye, but it can cause a lot of dead birds, especially when they are in cages and they're grown in intensive conditions. Okay, now in backyard settings where they have a free run and they are not as packed in, this is much less of a problem, but it still could be a problem, especially when the birds are not exposed early and they get a whopping dose in the environment. So this is all about getting exposed to little amounts of infectious disease agents so that the body or the chicken has time to develop an immunity to it. Okay, so you can relate that to a lot of diseases as well. You don't want an overwhelming infection. What you want is a normal, regular dose of infection that the body can overcome and develop an immunity against. Okay, right. Going back to gut health, right? This is what a normal intestine looks like. If I unzip it, you can see it's even, it's velvety. There's no blood, there's no damage. And I will show you what a gut looks like microscopically as well. All right, so you can appreciate, right? Normal, not normal. So you see a lot of blood and destruction in that dead bird. That is coccidiosis. And no surprise when you see that currant jelly, strawberry jelly, or cherry pie filling, everybody has got their own food terms for it, droppings, that is a sure sign of coccidiosis. And that will result in a lot of mortality in your flock. Okay. And when the birds somehow survives that severe infection, secondary bacterial infection happens, and we got necrotic enteritis. So necrotic enteritis is the bacterial infection brought about by coccidiosis infection. Otherwise, both are really bad news, right? All right, so you can see the velvety appearance of the gut. Let me just review that with you. Okay, so that's velvety and smooth. Look at this. This almost looks like a face towel. You can see that rough appearance. So you got a violent inflammatory reaction right there. And sometimes in acutely infected birds, you will see this this foul smelling diarrhea, that dark chocolate colored diarrhea right there. Basically, that is digested blood. Okay, so coccidiosis. Okay, this is what a normal intestinal surface looks like. Think about a lawn with lush, luxurious grass on it. All of those projections, finger-like projection, are surface area for the gut to absorb all the essential nutrients and all that stuff, right? So that is really what a healthy, normal intestine looks like. That's what my intestine looks like, yours, and even a bird, because we are all monogastrics. Okay. Now this is what an infected gut looks like. And you can see those little aliens over there, those purplish circles. Those are parasites. They're called coccidiosis. They look like eggs. And one of them will reproduce in 1 week to 12,000. Some of them would be making babies every week from thousands to 10,000s. So as you can imagine, in 3 weeks, you got millions. Okay. So you got a parasitized gut over there. You can see it's losing its structure. It's losing its absorptive capacity. So you can have birds having diarrhea, bloody diarrhea. And if they don't die because it's not severe enough, they would be losing performance, whether by loss of eggs or loss of weight. Okay. If it's bad enough because there's a secondary bacterial infection, this is what it looks like. It's unrecognizable. It's almost like a bomb went off the gut because you can't see those finger-like projections, right? Let's review this. Looks like on coccidia and necrotic enteritis, completely unrecognizable. All right, so this is what a coccidia looks like. On your left, they're little eggs. That's what we look at in the droppings. That's me right there in the field looking at coccidia in a commercial flock. And I've shown you this microscopic section over here on the gut on the right as well. So that's coccidiosis for you, okay? So bloody guts, bloody stools, most likely coccidiosis. So we'll talk about control later on. All right, so more familiar with you guys on the hobby area would be roundworms. Okay, so when you have a bird that doesn't put on weight, stop laying eggs, but doesn't have bloody droppings, it's more or less roundworms. And most of the time, it's not as severe as what you see over here. This is basically blocking the small intestine, and the bird is just starving to death, basically. Okay. And you can see on the left, on the right, you can see all those eggs. Okay, that's what it looks on the microscope. These are actual field pictures that I took. Okay, so when you have that blockage, that bird cannot pass feed. So it's rare to see this, but if it gets to this point, you will see adult roundworms in the droppings on the ground. Okay, this is fairly common. It's spread through the birds eating flies, worms, earthworms, and all of that stuff. So it's part of their diet, but you know, roundworms like to live as well. So one of the things we see as we move from conventional cage production to pasture or on the floor reared systems, we see a lot more of these roundworms in commercial settings. All right, another type of worm that is fairly important in turkeys because it's more severe in turkeys than chickens. So chickens naturally carry cecal worms. and most of the time it doesn't really affect them if they have enough pasture to move around. But it's in susceptible turkeys, especially the ones that are raised on wire before they get on the ground, it can really be severe in turkeys. So the cecal worm right here, you can see them, they're very short on the top left, but they also carry a hitchhiker, a microscopic, an invisible killer called Histomonas. It's a protozoa like cocci. We can't see it by the naked eye, but what it does is it travels through the body and destroys the liver and other organs. So in turkeys, you see a lot of this dead birds. It's called blackhead. I don't know why they call it blackhead, because it doesn't look black, but you can see this yellow necrotic lesions, abnormalities in the liver. Okay, so a lot of mayhem and destruction in a dead bird. So what you can do is regular deworming. So if you control the cecal worm and the roundworm, where this protozoa hitchhikes on, then you control Histomonas as well, or blackhead. So it comes together. So fly and beetle control is important, because that is how a lot of these worms and even the protozoa survive. Okay, you need to replace litter bedding and rotate scratch pens and pasture. So I mean, it really applies to us too. Avoid areas where there is hugely concentrated droppings, because droppings contain a lot of microorganisms that are pathogenic to birds, and parasites as well. All right, another one that I see, not a whole lot of parasites and disease kill guinea fowl. Okay, they're very tough creatures, right? But one of their Achilles heel or kryptonite would be this capillary or thread worms. So you can appreciate the thread-like quality of this worms on your left picture, as right there. And they have a distinctive football-shaped egg if you see them in the microscope. So between those two, you have a good diagnosis. So this is in the crop of the birds. It's not just in the duodenum, but the threadworm likes to live, adult threadworm likes to live in the crop. See, this bird has got an irritated crop and wasting away pretty much. All right, tapeworms can be found in chickens as well. This is a dramatic example of that. But in chickens, it really is not a big killer. It's there, but it's not doing a whole lot of damage. It just likes to coexist. Yes, is there anybody that's got a question? All right, I'll keep going here. So you can see over here, flies, worms, they're eaten by chickens, and this larvae or part of the life cycle of the tapeworms or even roundworms that establishes in the gut, and then it develops new tapeworms and roundworms and passes on to the eggs, passes down onto the droppings, right? So this is basically a rough cartoon on the life cycle of a lot of parasites. You can see the bird, it's infected with the tapeworm, the droppings have the eggs, and it gets eaten up or gets taken up by insects, dragonflies, worms, and all that good stuff. And then it likes to live as well. So what we're aiming for, if you have pasture raised birds, is not zero incidence of worms. Sometimes a little bit of infection there is good, because it continuously tickles the immune system. So it's almost like mom said, it's kind of bad for kids not to be exposed to the outside or the soil. I mean, they need a little bit of that, because it shores up their immune system. Same thing for chickens and other animals. What we don't want is an overwhelming infection or a weak immune system. A good immune system and a not so crowded and sanitized and clean system, okay, not sterile but clean, is ideal. Okay. All right, what we're showing right here, that some of this larvae, especially in some of those bird worms like threadworms, they like to live under the blades of grass and all that stuff. So this is kind of important in horses. They got their own worms, but also in some cases, some of these worms also exist in chickens. They hide under grass. They like to stay there and get eaten up by animals, and then they go back down into the soil again when the sun is high. Okay, so what we're saying here, how do you control this? Well, trim the grass a little bit, so not to the nub, but a reasonable amount, so you can see the sunlight in there. But the main thing here is just to rotate where you're rearing birds if they're free range, uh, or at least where their scratch area is to maintain cleanliness. All right, so we talked about this. So this is fairly self-explanatory. Provide clean water, clean area for raising these birds. You need to have good drainage. A lot of these worms, a lot of this bacteria, they survive when there is a wet, cold environment. So what you want is a well-drained, dry environment. Okay, so the reason why you don't want to have spilt feed is, when the feed is spilt on the scratch area as well. I mean, that's where all the droppings are, and that's where they be encouraged to peck at the litter and get more infected with higher doses of whatever parasite we just talked about. Okay, so we talk about UV light and larvae in grass, right? So reduce the exposure is basically what we want. And it's not really realistic to kill all of these parasites, and maybe it's not a good thing anyway. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to go into a lot of these drugs just because I work for a vaccine pharmaceutical company as well. But you can research them. I mean, there's very few, but there's some still that we can get out of our feed stores, but they're increasingly more regulated. Okay, so you got these two right here for roundworms. These are generic names: piperazine and fenbendazole. There are some that are used experimentally. They're still not. A lot of these are not approved for use, but they work. Capillaria still okay. Cecal worms. These are the two that commercial companies can use on the breeder side and pullets if they're not laying eggs. Okay, tapeworms. There's not a whole lot, but it's more on the control side. But not to worry, because tapeworms basically is not a huge problem. They're there, but they're really not causing a lot of havoc in chickens and turkeys and what have you. And with that, I'd like to give it back to either John or Megan and to the audience if they have any questions and anything you want to share from your experiences. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, I think John might be on the road. I had a couple of requests for you to show the prevention slide again.
Sure. All right, bear with me here. Did I just pass it? Probably did. Okay.
And then another question came through. Can you recommend any natural anti-parasitics like pumpkin seeds, etc.?
So I tried that when I was at the university. So let's just establish this so you know where I stand. They're not as good as some of this as piperazine, just because the active ingredients on some of the piperazine, they're pretty concentrated. So you get mixed results. Piperazine, sometimes nicotine, some people would infuse tobacco and then get that, but you can reach toxic levels. I mean, they're known to affect the nervous system of the animals. I would say at best, in my limited experience, I get mixed results. They will not stand up to stiff over really stiff challenge or infection, but they might work in reasonably low to moderate infections. So again, I'd like you to think about, I don't want you to get trapped into this, what can you give me a silver bullet kind of question. Everybody wants to have a silver bullet, right? So even some good medications can really get overwhelmed with poor management and all that stuff. So pumpkin seeds, pineapple, everybody, what some of the things I've tried over there: cinnamon, botanicals, oregano. What else have they used before? Wormwood. This is a big one: diatomaceous earth. Some have worked in some people's hands. What I've done in some of this research that I did in stiffer challenges, they don't hold up as well as the commercial alternative. The alternatives do not hold up as well as the commercial active ingredient types, but they have a place because because of how you're raising your birds. So I would say try it out. It won't hurt, right? But I think the focus here is just to enable the bird to be infected but not overwhelmed with infection. I think that's more important. Sanitation, rotation, density, that sort of thing. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, go ahead.
This next question kind of might go along with that a little bit. It says, I've heard mixed information about whether to regularly deworm chickens. Should they only be treated if they show signs of declining health and evidence of worms, or do you recommend annual deworming protocol?
So yeah, again, I hate to couch it, and I see some of this, for example, some of the ones that I interact with, usually it's more like morbid, because people don't call me to chat. Usually they have a dead bird or a sick bird, and then they start calling the university. Yeah. So those folks that have dead chickens, I would imagine they would have a high level of infection. So they say, well, how many birds do you have? I only have 30. And then say, how big is the scratch area? Oh, it's 9 by 9. It's always been like that for 9 years. So that's not very big. So for those folks that have limited area and they know that they have previous bouts with parasitism, I would say go for regular deworming, because that you're reliably going to experience high challenge. Now, for those that have don't have any experience with deaths due to parasitism, the leave it alone concept is also good. Yeah, but there's no one fit criteria. So I'm of the mindset that if you have the run and they're fine, leave them be with minimum interventions. Yeah, do what works for you.
All right, and this one is about the abnormal poop slide. The bottom right image. What does that indicate?
Let's go over that. Just stop me when you see it. Right here, probably.
That looks like it. Let me see.
Yeah. It's got to be it, because
yes,
anyway.
that slide.
Okay.
So that could be a moderate coccidia infection. In this case, usually if it's like roundworm, it's mostly watery diarrhea. I mean, clear. Sometimes it's clear. Okay, so it could be a lot of things. What we can deduce from here is it basically what it's eating is not digesting, it's just expelling it out. So there's some so this could be coccidiosis most of the time. So this is probably out of a severity lesion score of 1 to 4, this is to me like a +2, and the top left is a +4. That is a dead bird by the end of the day. Okay, this could be this bird maybe 4 days ago. Okay, this right here could be anything from just gastrointestinal upset, ate something it didn't like, maybe some sour mash or spoiled mash, and you know what, they'll just shrug it off. But you just don't want to see his blood. Okay, sometimes this green diarrhea here, it could be viral infection and all that stuff. What it doesn't indicate, okay, when people see this, the green stuff, they say, oh, I got Newcastle disease because I saw it in a handout. All it's saying is the bird is too sick to eat. And there's a whole book of the reasons why the bird is too sick to eat. Okay, but the take home here is that almost all of the time, the one that really you have to be paying attention to is coccidiosis, because it's so fast. Like I said, it grows to tens of thousands of offsprings in like 1 week, every week, until the bird is old enough to fight it off. So that's your really your major nemesis most of the time.
Great. I think the next one about reducing exposure to insects, I'm not sure if that is a question or just a comment. So if it is a question, can you clarify that? The next one. As a natural health practitioner, there are ways to prevent, treat parasites for humans. So the same applies to chickens. The natural treatments are probably better suited as preventatives.
So yeah, it could. We're both monogastric living beings, right? So there are some of that's, for example, some of the dewormers that I listed has applications in humans, even the ones that have been experimentally used. Experimental means that I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it has to go through this government process of being approved. So you make a label claim, you got to back it up and spend the research and the money for the government agencies to say this is approved in this species. But the concept is there. But unfortunately for backyard flocks and a lot of smallholder farms, that's the thing, is a lot of these pharmaceutical companies don't bother going through that process. Not to say that there's not other things that works out there. So really, it's up to you. Try it out. If it's a natural a remedy and it works for you, I say, go for it and share your experiences.
Yeah, I've been dealing with parasite resistance to dewormers in
Yes.
sheep and goats for the past 15, 20 years. Because it is a huge issue in them, because the main parasite that gets a hold of that we deal with them can cause death very quickly.
Yeah, stomach worms, right?
And
Barbacoa
yeah,
worms.
and I always tell people, if you have a natural quote dewormer remedy that is working for you, that's fine, keep going. But once they're clinical, then you're gonna have to put the chemical down their throat. But it may be that some of these natural remedies make it so you're having to deworm your goats once a year as opposed to 5 times a year, and that's fantastic, because we don't want to deworm them any more than we have to, because the drugs are very limited, and everybody's going to have a different experience with it depending on their management too.
That's right.
I just don't want people going out there and saying just give your animals pumpkin seeds to deworm them, because what works, if pumpkin seeds work on one farm, they might not necessarily work on another farm.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, be open-minded to what's available out there, certainly, but also be mindful that there's other things that would tip things into balance, like, how much of a challenge do I have? I think that's probably to me, in my experience, that's a more useful conversation. So, there's such a thing. You cannot really make it too clean, but at the same time, you don't want to pack in any animal. Even humans. It's bad for us to get packed in, right? So moving around, just and the immune system would take care of itself for the most part, especially in backyard flock settings. So don't fall into the trap of collecting too many birds more than what your husbandry and your property can handle. I think that's, for the most part, that's usually where most people make mistakes. Yeah.
And that happens with all species. The more you have, the more worms you're putting out onto the ground, the more challenge you're going to have.
Absolutely.
There's a question about the difference between abnormal droppings and the cecal droppings. The only difference, the color, both are watery, mucousy.
The smell too. The cecal droppings has got that strong, I would say, it's almost like a stopped up gutter. So it's like got a strong fartsy smell. I gotta say that. Okay, just because it comes from the ceca, and there's a lot of bacteria, billions of bacteria in there. Let me see where that is. Okay, right there. Okay, so as long as it's not blood, I'm not worried. Okay, so when you have the chickens, first thing in the morning, just look for that, whether that's in the nest boxes or down in the litter. So it's quite different. It's got that shiny and really it's got a different consistency, and it doesn't have rough feed particles as well, because when it reaches the ceca, most of the particles are digested. Yeah, and it's got that different smell on it, and so that is actually rich in a lot of good bacteria. Okay, so it's like us, right? So some of the stuff that's good for us because it promotes good good microbial digestion are really not good for us socially, because we pass gas, right? Beans and what have you. But anyway, it has that microbial property in it. It's got that. I can't describe it any better than to say it has that fartsy smell.
All right, here's an off-label dewormer question. Does the pour-on ivermectin for cattle work for deworming? I've had good luck with it for mites and lice, but wondering if it works for worms and chickens.
So it works, but you run the risk of overdose. So you got to be careful out there. And in my current job, I just can't talk about things that are not government approved. Does it work? Sure. And there's other examples out there on the internet. But when you're using a cattle dewormer, you're bringing a howitzer to a knife fight. So there's other less concentrated forms of ivermectin out there. So when you're using one that's good for cattle, it's kind of overkill. But yeah, conceptually it works, and some people out there have good luck with it. It's just that we're into this government approved or not. Yeah, so that's I'm gonna leave it there.
And we should mention that anytime you're using something that is not labeled for the intended purpose,
Right.
an animal that you need veterinary oversight for that,
Right.
that's considered off-label. So you do need to be working with a veterinarian if you are doing that. And a big part of that is, one part, you don't want to overdose them, but also these are food animals. So we don't want any drug residuals in the meat or the eggs, whatever they're producing. And dairy animals, the milk. So it is very important when you are using stuff off-label that you are working with a veterinarian to do that.
Very true.
All right, I'll give it another minute or so for any other questions that come in. But thank you for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Bautista, for sharing his wealth of knowledge with us.
I enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed this one a little bit more than the commercial ones, I will say. I have more of an interest in the backyard.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about actually taking fecal samples in case you think you are in a situation where you need to use a dewormer.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.